"You are not buying her like a cow." Thomas's voice cut through the crowd like a loud storm. His hand hit the seller's table hard, putting down money equal to 3 months of work. The coins rolled across the wood that was smooth from years of mean acts. Mary stood very still on the selling stage. She was 55 years old and shaking, not because she was scared, but because she could not believe it. No one had stood up for her in a very long time. The whispers had started before the sun came up in Riverside, California, 1885. People said Mary was too old to be useful, too worn out to deserve kindness, and too used up to belong anywhere. Her nephew had brought her here because his wife wanted him to. It was one less person to feed during the dry season, one less problem. The sun was very hot and bright. Mary's bare feet burned on the hot wood, but she refused to move. She had lived through 55 years of being ignored. She would live through this, too. The seller called her name with a mean voice. Mary, 55 years old, can still work, strong enough for washing clothes and cooking. Laughter moved through the crowd like bad medicine. Who would waste food on someone that old? A woman asked meanly. Then Thomas stepped forward. His gray eyes looked right at Mary as if she were the only person there. He was young, maybe 30, with dirty clothes from travel and dusty boots. But his voice sounded like a man who had lost everything and refused to lose again. And in that moment, Mary wondered if kindness still existed in this hard world. If this story touches your heart, if you believe some truths need to be told, do not let it go away. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Thomas turned to the seller, his face tight with anger. What did her family get for putting her up here? The place went totally silent. Even mean people knew when something was shameful. Mary's voice was clear and steady. 1 bag of flour so they would not go hungry this winter. Thomas's face got dark. He reached into his coat and pulled out a leather bag heavy with money. That is 3 months of pay, he said, his voice low and serious. More than enough to pay for whatever debt you think she owes. The crowd took a deep breath. Money like that could feed a family for half a year. He turned back to Mary. For the first time in many years, she saw herself in someone's eyes, not as a problem, but as a human being. I am Thomas, he said. I have a farm 15 miles south. I need help. I pay fair money, but I am not buying you like a farm animal. If you come with me, it is because you choose to. And if you ever want to leave, I will take you anywhere and give you enough to start new. Mary stared, her throat feeling tight. Why me? Thomas's voice became soft. Because everyone else sees you as too old, but I see a survivor. I need someone strong enough to help me keep my farm alive. The words hit her powerfully. What about the paper, she whispered, the years of forced work? There are no papers, Thomas said firmly. You work for me, I pay you money. Simple as that. He held out his hand, steady and sure. Mary looked at it for a long moment. Then she placed her old, rough hand in his. The Thomas farm spread across yellow valleys that seemed to breathe under the California sun. Mary stood in the doorway of the small guest room. Her chest felt tight with feelings. A real bed. A door with a lock on the inside. Time alone. Respect. She had not known respect in years. That first morning, Thomas made coffee and put out bread and fruit jam. I thought we would need something filling, he said. Long day ahead. No orders, no meanness, just kindness. They worked side by side, checking fences and looking at the barn. Mary moved with the speed of someone who had spent a lifetime working without complaining. When they reached a broken part of the fence, Thomas began taking down the tools. These posts weigh about 50 pounds each, he warned. Do not hurt yourself. Mary lifted 2 posts, one on each shoulder, and carried them to the work spot without stopping. Thomas stared. You are going to hurt yourself. She shook her head. I've carried heavier things." His look changed. He was not angry at her, but at the life that had forced her to be so strong through pain. "Then your nephew worked you very hard." "Yes," Mary said simply, "but at least now I know what I can do." They worked until the sun went down. Their clothes were wet with sweat, and their muscles hurt, but their hearts felt lighter. By evening, Thomas said something that made her catch her breath. "If anything in the house does not work for you, we'll fix it. You tell me, and we'll make it right." No one had ever cared if she was comfortable in a place, but Thomas did. Weeks passed quickly. Mary felt herself relaxing. Laughter came back to her life in quiet, unexpected moments. The farm came alive under their shared work. Fences stood tall. The barn was strong. Hope replaced sadness. One afternoon they rested under a big tree near the stream. Thomas handed her a water bottle, his face thoughtful. "You are stronger than any person I have ever worked with," he said, "and I am thankful for it. This farm was dying. With you here, we have a real chance." Mary held her breath, waiting for the mean words that always followed praise. But Thomas only continued, "If you are willing, I would like to give you more than just pay. Stay 2 years, work like you have been, and I will give you a part of the money when we sell the goods, a real share in the farm." Mary's hands shook. "No one has ever offered me a share of anything." "You have earned it," Thomas said simply. That evening over dinner, he asked about her life before the sale. She told him about her husband who had died, about raising her nephew after his parents died, about the years of being invisible. "You deserved better," Thomas said quietly. "You still do." Mary looked at him across the table. This young man saw her not as old, but as valuable. "Why are you so kind to me?" Thomas's eyes looked far away. "I lost my wife and son 3 years ago. A fever took 'em both in 1 week. I know what it is like to be alone. I will not let anyone else feel that way if I can help it." Mary reached across the table and held his hand tight. They were both survivors, and they were building something beautiful. The riders came at sunrise, 5 men on horses. Dust rose like a warning. Mary was in the garden when she heard them. She stood up straight, her hands holding the garden tool tight. Thomas stepped out of the house, his face hard. The lead rider got down. He had cold eyes and a mean smile. "My name is Mr. Black. Mr. Stone sent us." Thomas's jaw got tight. "What do you want?" Mr. Black pointed casually around the land. "Mr. Stone has an offer. Sell the farm or he will take it another way. Fires start easy in dry seasons. Accidents happen. That barn of yours looks like it would burn real quick." It was not a warning. It was a promise of violence. Before Thomas could answer, Mary stepped forward, her voice steady. "There is a problem with your plan. Threatening to start fires gets a man hanged in California. 5 witnesses would be too many for Mr. Stone." Mr. Black's eyes got thin. "You think an old woman can stop 5 men with guns?" "I think you were sent to scare us, not kill us," Mary answered calmly. "Violence leaves proof. Stone is too smart to leave proof." Mr. Black stared at her for a long moment, seeing she was sure. Then he spit on the ground. "This is not over." The riders left quickly. Thomas let out a shaking breath. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever seen." "They did not hurt us," Mary said, though her hands were shaking. "That is what matters." They rode into town and told the sheriff what happened. Now any move Stone made would be known by everyone. "If you believe bravery can happen at any age, if you have ever felt ignored but refused to disappear, let this story be proof you still matter. Share it and leave a comment telling us where you are watching from." For weeks, no attack came, but the worry never left. They worked harder and faster, fixing what time and lack of care had broken. One evening, Mary climbed into the barn loft to check the hay. The wood under her boots cracked. She dropped through the floor, her body swinging into the open air. Her hands caught a heavy beam at the last second, wood pieces digging into her hands. "Mary!" Thomas's scream went through the barn. He climbed up the ladder fast, his face white with fear. He lay flat on the floor, reaching for her wrists. "I have got you," he said, holding her with both hands. Her arms burned as they pulled her back onto solid wood. She fell against the floor, trying to catch her breath. Thomas pulled her into a tight hug, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. "God," he whispered into her hair, "I thought I lost you. I cannot lose you, Mary. I cannot." When he pulled back, his hands were shaking, his eyes were red. "I need you to know," he said slowly. "You matter to me more than I can explain. I cannot go back to being alone. I would not survive it again." Mary's throat felt tight. "You do not have to say anything," he added quickly. "I know life has been hard. I just needed you to know." But Mary did not pull away. "You matter to me too, Thomas, more than I thought possible." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to turn away. She didn't. Their lips met in a gentle, shaking kiss that grew into something real and strong. That night, sitting by the fire, Thomas said the words without warning. "Marry me." Mary's breath stopped. Thomas spoke fast. "I know it is fast, but Mary, I love you. I love your strength, your bravery, your loyalty. I loved my wife and son, and I will always carry them in my heart, but I love you too, and I do not want to spend another day not being married to you." Tears filled Mary's eyes. "I never thought anyone would want me," she whispered. "Not at my age, not after everything." "You are not too old," Thomas said strongly. "You are exactly who I need, exactly who I want." "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with joy. "Yes, Thomas, I will marry you." Winter hit the farm hard that year, but they faced it together. One snowstorm brought a young woman half frozen to their door. Her name was Sarah, and she was running from Mr. Stone. He had tried to force her to work for him by threatening her family. This time, Thomas didn't just go to the sheriff, he brought back a newspaper reporter. Sarah told her story. The sheriff filed charges, and when they rode to Stone's ranch with a legal paper, his power began to fall apart. Stone screamed at Mary as they took him away. "This is your fault. You will lose everything." But Thomas sat beside her, taking her old hand in his. "No," he said quietly. "We will be just fine because we have each other." 2 days later, the sheriff married them in his office. "I do," Thomas said firmly. "I do," Mary said, the words sounding like freedom. Spring painted the farm in green and gold. Life returned to the land. Joy returned to their home. Sarah stayed with them, becoming the daughter Mary never had. One evening, as the sky turned orange, Mary took Thomas's hand and led him to the porch. She had been nervous all day, her stomach feeling funny with a secret she could barely believe. "Thomas," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." He turned to her, worry showing in his eyes. "What is it?" She took a breath. "The doctor came by yesterday while you were in town." Thomas stood straight. "Are you sick?" "No," Mary said, her voice shaking with feeling. "Thomas, I'm going to have a baby." He froze. For a long moment he simply stared at her. His face changed from shock to wonder to huge joy. "A baby," he whispered, his hand moving to her stomach with great care. "We are having a baby." Tears ran down his face. The life he lost, the life Mary never thought she would have. A new beginning neither of them expected. "I didn't think it was possible," Mary said, her own tears falling. "Not at my age." "You have always been full of surprises," Thomas said, pulling her close. "Always." That night they sat together under the stars, his hand resting on her belly. Both of them were amazed at the miracle growing inside her. At 55 years old, Mary was becoming a mother for the first time, and she had never felt more alive. Months later, at the harvest party, the whole town gathered to celebrate the end of a hard season. Mary stood beside Thomas, her belly round with life, her face glowing with happiness. Thomas surprised her with a silver bracelet he had made himself. It had 3 pictures carved into it, a mountain, a barn, and a strong woman standing tall. "You were never too old," he said as he put it onto her wrist. "You were always just right." He turned to the crowd, his voice carrying across the square. "This is my wife, Mary. She saved my farm. She saved my life. And now she is giving me a future I never thought I would have again." The crowd cheered. Even those who had laughed at her at the sale now looked at her with respect. Mary stood with her hand on her stomach, her husband at her side, and a future she never believed she deserved rising before her like the sun. Later, as they walked home beneath the stars, Mary turned to Thomas with a soft smile. "I am thinking," she said, "that I am glad that broken farmer told me I was perfect for him." Thomas laughed, full of joy. "Best choice I ever made." Their story was no longer about surviving. It was about belonging. It was about love that saw what others missed. Sarah walked ahead of them, humming softly, and Mary realized something deep. She had spent 60 years being told she was too much or not enough, but Thomas had seen her exactly as she was, and that had made all the difference. 3 months later, on a cold February morning, Mary gave birth to a son. Thomas held the tiny crying baby in his arms, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Thomas whispered, "just like his mother." Mary watched from the bed, tired but shining with happiness. "What should we name him?" Thomas looked at her with such love it took her breath away. "James, after my father." "James," Mary said softly, testing the name. "It is perfect." Sarah stood in the doorway, tears in her eyes. "Can I hold him?" "Of course," Mary said. "You are his sister now." Sarah held baby James with care, and Mary realized that this was her family, not the one that left her, not the one that sold her, but the one she chose, the one she built with love and bravery and hope. Thomas sat beside her on the bed, his hand finding hers. "I never thought I would have this again," he said quietly. "A family, a home, a future." "Neither did I," Mary whispered, "but here we are." Outside, the farm stretched across the valley, strong and doing well. Inside, a family gathered around new life, connected not by blood alone, but by choice. Mary had been told she was too old for love, too old for purpose, too old to matter. But Thomas had seen the truth. She was never too old. She was exactly right. If you have ever been made to feel invisible, if you have ever been told your best days are behind you, this story is your reminder. Love, purpose, and new beginnings have no end date. Don't let this truth fade. Share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe so you never miss a story that reminds you that you still matter. And tell us in the comments where you were watching from. Your story matters too.